Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises to manage clients and projects with max efficiency, sharing Wix's SEO tech to help you drive growth.
Fix errors, waste, and issues in a couple of clicks. Get alerted whenever you're off track. Sign up at trueclicks.com.
Hello. So, despite Google's protest that links don't really matter anymore, informational architecture is actually one of the biggest... Is it? I'm not clicking anything. Okay. Factors of SEO success, and it impacts crawl efficiency, page speed, topical authority, of course, and user experience. And yet it's still a really common issue across sites everywhere. So why is it so hard to get right? Because let's face it, as SEOs, we're looking at contextual links and user journeys as part of our everyday tasks. But when it comes to enterprise sites, we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of content pages. I'm going to be fighting my deck the whole way here because it's on its own trajectory. Meaning that manual implementation of internal links and anchor text just isn't scalable. And navigations become a complex balance of presenting useful pages to users. Oh my God. And presenting users with a maze of options. This example is actually taken from a smaller site that doesn't have the stock to facilitate a mega nav like this. So that when users are going to this mega navigation and they're going on landing pages and category pages, they're actually landing on a experience that limits their buying power rather than compels them to dive in more. So how do we organize large sites for both search engines and users? A large part of it comes down to preparation. And to prepare, we must prioritize, not just in the sense of building your roadmap and working on each section of the project and who's responsible, but in deciding on what areas of the site are the most valuable. And when we're talking about enterprise sites, we can't just say, okay, well, the PLPs or the PDPs or the transactional pages are the most valuable, because we're talking about such a high volume of pages that we have to think about the best sellers, what products resonate with users, what categories and subcategories are the most important to the brand. And of course, where does the mid-funnel content come in? What content really drives the user towards conversion? And once you've got a clear idea of where your priorities lie, you can start crawling your site, taking care to segment. It's quite easy. You can do it in a lot of crawlers. There's a few down here. I usually use URLs. Sometimes you have to be a bit more creative if you haven't got a clear URL path to segment your data in. And you can use this to align with the internal links on site. That's really easy. You can just dump all your crawl data into an Excel sheet, segment it if your site's really big and it's not going to be handled, turn it into a pivot table, and pull out your segments or your clusters and the average number of links to each. You can segment this into clusters and into segments or by cluster, how it works for your site. And of course, you're going to want to review the crawl depth of the site. When you're dealing with enterprise sites, you're not going to be looking at crawl depth of 4. I'll tell you now, it's going to be really hard to achieve. So you're actually going to be thinking more about 5 or 6, but you're going to be looking at what Google is crawling or what search engines are crawling in comparison to the crawl depth. Most log file analyzers can tell you this. And I take a picture of this to go through post-implementation to compare where you were to where you are now. You also want to assess your anchor text, of course. Pause for a minute. This is actually a really good template from Daniel Foley-Carter. He shared it on LinkedIn. There's a link down there. You can get it in the deck once it's shared. But it allows you to just paste in a section of your website and get a pull through of the anchor text that's used by count by URL. I've used a really bad example here so you can see when it's going wrong. Obviously, this should reflect the keywords that you're targeting. And you're going to want to map the anchor text that you've got to your keyword map. If your keyword map only goes one keyword deep, there's going to be some more work to do there. You can think about maybe utilizing your GSC query data, or maybe utilizing ranking data, but it's not going to be as accurate. So it really is worth putting in the time and extending your keyword mapping in that case. And of course, it's not going to be just about analyzing the internal parts of the site, but the backlinks as well. So continuing the exercise for anchor text, looking at PageRank, you can calculate this to yourself, but most crawlers do it for you. So I'd use their equivalent of PageRank. And I also think it's good practice to keep a list of known hub pages in each cluster, because it won't always be reflected by something like PageRank. And you're going to know, as part of the team that's looking after the website's SEO, which pages really have had a lot of work going in terms of outreach and building informational hubs. And once you've gone through all this analysing, you're going to start thinking about how that's going to be implemented. And in implementation, of course, you've got to think about the site structure. I've got a hierarchical structure here and a silo structure here. 9 out of 10 times I'm going to recommend a hierarchical structure because it does what it says on the tin. We're talking about large websites where we don't want to overcomplicate things with something like a web structure. However, silo structures do have their place. So if you think of someone like Microsoft who has lots of independent products, I'd say that a siloed structure is ideal for them. And you're going to want to build a picture of the relationships between sites. So I've got some examples here, but it may be different on your site. I'm thinking the e-commerce journey, where of course you've got PLPs and PDPs have a very intimate relationship, but your guides are also going to drive users there. And of course, help sections are going to help convert your users as well. And then you're going to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to implement this on site without going in and having to do manual implementation? How do we do this in sweeping movements? Well, there's obviously the body of the homepage. It's one of the most important pages on site. It is the most important page on site. And the body is going to hold much more weight than the navigation. I really like what Nike's done here because they've taken their top categories and what are almost brand icons for them. And of course, the mega nav is really important. ASOS do this really well because they're really nice visual points on each one so that users are naturally drawn to the areas that they want, and they factor in everything about the user, from what the top landing pages are, to making sure users can navigate elsewhere, to thinking about the size and shape of people purchasing their clothing, to thinking about what's driving the user to site. Are they going to a wedding? Are they going to a festival? Which makes the user journey really easy. And of course, breadcrumbs have their place, especially from a UX perspective, because it tells users where they are on site and how to get back to a point and go and search for more information. But it's also a really useful tool in getting rid of orphan URLs and creating contextual links. And they are followed as links by Google. It's also important to mention recommended products or related products because they help form those relationships between different clusters or child clusters where you don't have space for that on the navigation. So, and they're easy to set up with your dev team in terms of saying, these are the relationships we want to reflect. Can you please put this in? And of course, I call them link blocks. I don't know what everybody else calls them, but every time I say to a developer, I'd like to put link blocks in here, they go, what is a link block? It's quite simple. It's a block of links. Making them visually appealing to users is great because it will help them actually engage with those links. This example is from Auto Trader, and it's simply the homepage, but it has a bunch of link blocks linking to their informational pages, which help inform the journey and drive those users towards conversion again. But you can use this space to do everything from linking users to that informational journey to linking them to other collection pages and category pages and PLPs that may relate to them from the point of the website that they're on. And I just wanted to have a minute to say, bear with me one moment. My throat will dry up if I don't drink like tons of water during this. So filters, although we hide them from Google, they definitely have a place in the architecture for users. So as SEOs, you should be thinking about what these filters contain and how they're going to help users find the products that they're after. And throughout this process, keep accessibility and usability in mind. And that means thinking about how users are accessing that content. I really like what motors.co.uk do here because they have links at the top of their PLPs going straight down to the content on page, to the FAQs on page that users might be wondering about, to related content. And of course, it can be a really useful aspect in users that don't scroll to get them down to those link block areas and get them engaging with your site and other content across the site. And of course, it's really important to continually use data for your users. And that doesn't just mean SEO data. Obviously, you've got internal search functions that are going to inform that and help you create new pages, landing pages, or help you create new journeys. But also thinking of that from a omni-channel perspective and what you're learning from user engagement through email marketing or through social media, and using that to impact user journeys on site. Just a bit of housekeeping. It's really important to keep redirects to a minimum from a user perspective, not only because they've spent time on your site, they're getting to the content that they want, and then they get bounced straight up to somewhere that they've already been, and it's quite frustrating, but because it can also add to your page load time, which is just frustrating as well. E-commerce sites is not too hard, but in terms of marketplace sites, it's really hard to manage those redirects because you're talking about PDPs that are completely unique to each variation. And do not fear no-follow links. So I've worked with people in the past who really don't want to touch no-follow links within the internal architecture, which is a shame. You can use, of course, you can use JavaScript links if you're really scared of it so that Google's not following it. But if there are pages within your site structure that you don't want indexed and that are not being blocked by the no index tag, and they have links going to them, it's going to undermine that whole process. And of course, it's going to impact the user journeys on site. And remember to review the work that's been done in the case of crawling and checking the implementation that's been done correctly. And both users and search engines are finding that useful, but also in measuring the success of the implementation. So think about page views, which shows engagement, conversions or purchases, crawling and indexing, of course, because that's going to be the major point that you're going to get out of this. And ultimately, your rankings and traffic. So in summary, priority matters, preparing is key. What Google's and user wants isn't going to match up. You have to provide for both and measure your success. Thank you.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.
Demand Sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.